Shalom, Rav Moshi'im, and this is us. This is another episode of Unwalled Synagogue, where there are no walls. Pay no attention to the walls you see around me. There are no walls in this synagogue, only windows, like the one you have open in front of you right now, through which you can participate, be a part of this. This is not a synagogue service. This is not a traditional synagogue like that, but more or less online Beit Hamikdash. This is a house of just teaching and learning, and a place where you can just come and learn some things about the, Jewish faith of Messiah, the Messianic faith. The Messianic faith, of course, being inherently Jewish, but this episode I wanted to touch on something very important. In the previous teaching, I spoke up about the issue of being political, I think episode 21, and this episode I kind of wanted to backtrack to that because I said something that I kind of disagree with. And, well, not disagree with, but I didn't really go into detail. This kind of reminds me of the book of Mishlei, or Proverbs. As you can see, going from the beginning to end, it's called the Book of Wisdom, right? Written by Alechem, the wise king. I'm not trying to equate myself with him, but what I am saying is that when you look at it, the book of Proverbs, it has a thought, a wise saying put forth, an idea, an understanding, a teaching, in of itself, a complete sentence, a complete structured teaching, and then it follows it up with something else. And no matter what it goes to next, it's usually connected in some way. It's really interesting, so it kind of is like that with this Unwalled Synagogue thing I got going on right now. I say something and then it leads me to say, well, you know what? I should mention this. That reminds me, I need to go into detail about this. And it's not so much a rabbit hole, kind of, sort of, but more like, this is touching on something else. I better talk about that, because people may ask, hey, why do you only say this about that topic? So I mentioned the whole illegal immigration thing. We're talking about not choosing to be, to not get into political debates and choosing not to take sides politically simply for the purpose of debating our side. And I know when it comes down to it, it's typically a matter of right and wrong. And I wanted to correct some things I said in the previous teaching, because it's one thing to get out there and publicly speak against, political leaders, your own government, your own president. While we have the right to do so, you have to understand that you have to use wisdom. No one's gonna like someone out there bad-mouthing them, and if someone has money and power, you can't be surprised if they use that money and power to silence their opponents. Now, I'm not saying that that's right. I do believe in the First Amendment, but I do believe that the First Amendment gets taken advantage of a lot. People use it to say some despicable things, and in some cases just to openly bash people and use it for hate speech. Not saying that opposing a political leader is hate speech, but I think we should just use wisdom in what we do and how we do it. Specifically, I think that it's very good to be very mindful of just, it's one thing to speak publicly against a political leader, which can be asking for trouble. Speaking against someone publicly, especially if you garner enough attention, if you're a recognizable force like Yochanan Hamadil, speaking up against a political leader can cause you to get some negative attention. That has to be understood. But it's on one hand, should we just remain silent, like it says in the Torah, do not slander a member of your people, but also do not stand idly by while someone's life is in danger. So by that, it's saying that if exposing someone, speaking about someone is necessary to save a life, and whether it's something that you suspect or something that you could touch, revealing someone's secret or a secret of someone that if it's to save a life, you absolutely are obligated, according to the Torah, to speak up, even if you're worried about possibly lashon hara, or the evil speech, which is a thing, especially that's big in Jewish culture. We know that because being believers, whether you call yourself Messianic or Christian or Jewish, whatever, if you believe in Messiah, Yeshua, that he is the Son of God, then that he is the promised Moshiach, that he is God, one with the Father, 100% man, 100% God. If you believe in him, then you are, obligated to also, you should know these things. It's of the Spirit, right? It's not that these things were invented by Jewish people They were instructed by God, who gave these teachings to the people of Israel, of things like slander and the understanding of not, just using your words not to hurt others, but loving your neighbor as yourself. And that's what this thing is going to come down to. The whole topic of how to treat foreigners. And it comes down to, it touches big on the issue of immigration, because I mentioned it in my last video as something that, people feel strongly about. It can be hard to navigate these things. And I feel like I misspoke in saying that, because they can be tough to navigate, but some things are just black and white. Some things are just right and there's wrong, right? And in this situation with the immigration, I think there's both, some black and white and some gray areas where we just need to take a magnifying glass. Usually when it comes to gray areas, it's not so much that they're just gray because there is no right and wrong. No, there's definitely right and wrong. There's black and white there. We just need a magnifying glass to zoom in and kind of focus on exactly what is right, what's wrong with this thing. But look at the finer details, right? So it's one thing to publicly speak against a political leader, that way. Even though the Word of God says, do not speak against a member of your, a ruler of your people, right? So there's that. But at the same time, if people think you don't want to, people should not be confused on your stance on an issue. Like, does, Moshi'im support this thing that is actually evil, or does he not support? Does he oppose this? And it's one thing to oppose an evil act. It's another thing to say you oppose a political leader. And it's not that some political leaders need some opposition, but you're not in the position to do that. As citizens, we're taught to fear God and the king, because he's been put there by God, whether he's a good king or a bad king. We have to have regard for that. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't speak up for our rights. The civil rights movement, for example, there were things that were being done against black people, and there's still rights that are needed to be established for other minorities in the U.S., let alone around the world, for sure. But that's something else I want to get into later, because that's definitely important, the topic of civil disobedience and how to speak up. How do you enact that? But for now, focusing on how to treat foreigners, especially in the topic of immigration in this country, in the United States of America. It's been a hot topic. Many people have had many opinions, and I've had having driven for Uber and Lyft, I've heard a ton of opinions, mainly from people who oppose the immigration thing, and I've dealt with people who perhaps are illegal immigrants, and I've seen a ton of them in my old neighborhood where I grew up, and I went to high school and middle school. I got to seeing it's, a lot more, people, south of the border have moved in. It's a lot more about Spanish culture and all these things. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that at all. But you have to wonder how much of this is an impact of the fact that during the term of former presidents, not Donald Trump, but other presidents like Biden, immigration was going by unchecked virtually. There was just people were coming in without, being checked. And the whole issue that a lot of Americans that are native citizens, whether black, white, Hispanic, Mexican, Asian, that what we're seeing is that people who came over here illegally, there are people who are arguing, what if they break no laws? And then there are the other side, which is usually the conservative side, arguing, well, they've already broken a law, coming over here illegally. And that's totally understandable. But I think a lot of people, from maybe on the left side of things, on the liberal side of things, may be arguing that if you're an illegal immigrant, but you're coming over here and you need help, or what if your country's going through war and you could die and you're just trying to find somewhere, that's understandable. These are the dire situations. But a lot of it is not always that case. And unfortunately, we've had issues where people are seeing like Chinese spies coming in through the borders because they're not being safeguarded. Things like people from other countries that have a criminal background in their own country, they can come here and be treated like they're not criminals when they've actually committed crimes, serious crimes in their other countries. There's those kind of things too, and then they come over here and they do the same things that they did over there. You have child predators that were child predators in their former countries. Now they come over here and they're doing the same thing, but they're not marked as such because they're illegal, and we just kind of let them come on in. No, that's not right. And also the fact that it was destabilizing the economy because of the fact that you have illegal immigrants that come here and businesses will employ them intentionally, give them places where they can just work and make them money. So they're making all this money off of them, but at the same time, these people are being taken advantage of. So the illegal immigrants are not being given the rights that they should have. And then on top of that, you have where not only are they not being given the rights, and aid, like things like health insurance, health coverage, 401k, they're just working and they're being paid less. Which for the businesses, they make a lot of money. So when you look at it, looking at the current administration, the Trump administration, and deporting illegal immigrants, people may say that that's just punishing people who are being taken advantage of. The truth is, we do need to have a way to punish businesses that take advantage of these illegal immigrants. If you do your background check, like, oh, well, this person is actually here illegally. They don't have any paperwork. Okay, great. We'll pay them less. We'll work them harder. They work more. They get paid less. They get less from it, and it's still better than where they came from. In many cases, better than the country where they used to call home. But it's working. The businesses should be punished too. Business owners and businesses that try to take advantage. I remember being at a grocery store where a lady that worked there wanted help moving. So she asked me, a fellow coworker, hey, can you help me move? I said, sure. She said, me and my boyfriend are gonna have a van. We're gonna pick you up at this time or whatever. Okay, cool. They picked me up. They said that they paid me. So okay. We drive by this place within the city that I wasn't used to. It was over in Denton, Texas. And when they drive over, they drive over to this place where there's all these, I recognize these Spanish men who are here. You hear them speaking Spanish, and they're just standing around. And as soon as the van drives up, they start looking very, very attentive. And I'm feeling kind of nervous, like what's about to happen. Her boyfriend driving rolls on the window and says, uno, I only need one. They start bomb rushing the van. They're all fighting over getting to the door. It startled me. I was actually frightened. So one of them just hops in, and he's just like sitting next to me and not looking at me, but he looks very nervous. He looks very tense, and I'm kind of tense, like, what's going on? It just was really weird. So I guess they were going to pay them, and they did pay them. I remember working with the guy, but it was a thing where it was kind of like, it really gave me a creepy kind of vibe. It really creeped me out. It made me feel bad. These people, I felt bad for them. I wasn't like, oh, y'all, we've heard of hate crimes being committed against, illegal immigrants, especially, those who are Spanish speaking illegal immigrants. How, I've heard reports, you've seen it in the news where they, lowered away into a corner or into a place, promised work, and then these guys, usually native citizens, beat them. Maybe not always native citizens. No doubt there are some illegal immigrants who plot against each other just to have a better, trying to look out for only themselves. It's just all kind of things happening. It's just a bad environment. It's not how things should be done. So this was always an issue, and there is a legal way to come here into the United States, right? You might say, what if people are in an emergency and they can't just wait for everything to be cleared? That sucks. That's not the easiest, and I can't give you an easy solution to that. Are there exceptions? Maybe there can be, maybe not. I don't know. But what I do know is that a lot of times that's not always the issue. And when I act like it's always the issue, a thing I have about it is with the previous administration, the government that was in charge, aside from Trump, were depending upon, and this is something that's happened on the Democratic side of things that I've heard mentioned, and it kind of makes sense, kind of tracks. I've not seen this so much from the Republican side, although it definitely could be an issue. But as far as I see, I don't see Republicans fighting to have illegal immigrants here. So what I see is that Democrats are fighting to get illegal immigrants in because it gets them votes. They know that native citizens, a lot of us are not going to be okay with some things, the things that they want to do in order to give themselves a better chance. This is why many people voted against, for example, Kamala Harris. It wasn't even, you could say it was because she was a woman and all this. I won't doubt that may be a big part of it. People want a man to run the country because more people are have more confidence in a man running the country, especially one that already has before. And we saw some good things happening when Trump was in office, his first term. But looking at it this way, what I'm seeing happen is that the previous administration was trying to get illegal immigrants in to get votes. And it was like, you can't have illegal immigrants in and legally allow them to vote. That seems not right because they are not even legal citizens. But that's what was happening. And then you heard the whole controversy with them bringing in, using dead people as voters when Trump ran for a second term and Biden won. And it was like, wait, you had people's names on ballots that were dead, that were voting for Biden. And it was like, it just is all part of the whole controversy. And then they want to accuse Trump of, the votes were rigged for his previous election. There's all kind of things going back and forth, man. There's all the things you could say, but that's definitely an issue. You might say, well, that's not true. You can't really prove that the Democrats were using illegal immigrants to get votes. There's maybe better evidence to support that. I've heard arguments. I've been given, things to look at to help me understand that better, but that's not even the main issue you want to focus on. That's on the political side of it. And if you're trying to bring in illegal immigrants into your country to help pad your votes so that you can stay in power, that's bad, that's evil. Whether it's Trump doing it or Biden or whoever, that's just wrong. Using dead people to get votes, putting their name on ballots, on votes, you can stuff the ballot and whatever, that's wrong. Regardless. But specifically, I want to get back to the main topic of foreigners in this country. And one thing about illegal immigration, what does the Word of God say about it? Let's look at the fact that Abraham lived as a foreigner in a foreign land. And matter of fact, he asked these people to whom he was foreign, said, hey, I'm a foreigner here. That's why the term used for Abraham, he was the first Hebrew, right? Well, the term used, although ever can refer to an ancestor of the Jewish people in the written, whose name is recorded in the Torah and the HaSefer Bereshit, book of Genesis. The Ivri, he was called in Ivri when they were crossed over by the Canaanite, the Canaanites who were in the land. They looked at him and said, who's this foreigner here? Especially, I believe what happened is instead of taking the land bridge that led into the country, he crossed over through the river. He went through a portion where the river, so he had to actually go through the water. And I think that's kind of another thing that happened during his trek into Canaan or the land of Canaan, that marked him saying, like, this guy's weird, this guy's a stranger, and also he was foreign to them. They owned the land and he was a stranger to them. So what do we say about that? I think one cool thing to say about it is, this is one thing that the Lord points out continuously when he starts giving them commandments through Moshe. For example, in Shemot 12:43, Shemot is also known as the book of Exodus after Genesis. So HaSefer Shemot, the book of Shemot, 12:48 or 12:43, no foreigner may eat of the Pesach lamb. Now we just had Pesach come in just recently, just a few days ago. We're still kind of on there. So looking at that, I look at that and I think about the verse coming after that, 5 verses later, Shemot 12:48. But if the foreigner and all his males are circumcised, they, in other words, they enter covenant with Yod He Vav He, Baruch Shemo Olam Va'ed, the God of Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Avotenu, the God of our forefathers, he may eat it, but no one uncircumcised. So at first he says no foreigner may eat it. But if the foreigner enters covenant and they become a proselyte, they become one of us, one of you, then they may eat it, but no one who's uncircumcised. So in that case, you may have a native-born Jew who's uncircumcised. Maybe they wouldn't be allowed to eat it, Whereas a foreigner who had him and all his males circumcised, maybe they may eat it. Did that happen? Who knows? Potentially, I don't know. But that's a thing, right? Maybe you have Jews back then that didn't buy into the whole thing of circumcision, so maybe they would not have their people circumcised, and as a consequence, maybe this thing happened. Who knows? I don't know if any specific example of that, but that could play out according to the Torah. But it points to the fact that if the foreigner abides by our laws and enters covenant the same way we did, then we are not to treat them any different. Because as we know, Paul talks about this. Rav Shaul, what state was Abraham in when he received the promise to look at the stars and count them all, in a state of uncircumcision? And he believed, and his trust was counted unto him as righteousness. That means that all those who are uncircumcised can still call Abraham their father if they believe as he believed, specifically putting their faith on God, which is only possible through Moshiach Yeshua. So that's that. Looking at Shemot 22:20, mistreat no foreigner, for you too were foreigners in Mitzrayim, the land of Egypt. Mitzrayim is a plural term for shackles, which is a term used by Torah and colloquially for Egypt. At that time especially, it was a land where we were shackled, we were imprisoned, we were confined as a people. Not only as a people, but also our faith, our observance. We couldn't even live for God and be Jewish. Anyway, Shemot 23. Also want to point out something else in Vayikra 19:34. Treat the foreigner staying with you like the native born among you. You are to love him as yourself, for you were foreigners in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt. I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, I am Adonai, your God. Again, this points to the whole thing. This is the big thing I mentioned. I heard mentioned too, is that you have foreigners that will come in and they have children. What happens then if they have children here? What do? Do we, send their children home too? Or if the father and mother are legal immigrants, what do we do about the child that they have here? Do we send the parents home without their child? That wouldn't be right. They have to be put into the foster system, which, even in the U.S., first world country, is not all that great, as we've heard of all kind of horror stories about people who've gone into foster care and been mistreated and abused. That's a thing. And on top of that, or do we send a child away with their father and mother, even though the child was born here, to technically a citizen, right? How do you do that? So it's just like that. And maybe issues like that rose up in Israel, where you had foreigners who came in and didn't want to live by the law of Moshe, didn't want to live by the laws that they were there. Maybe they came in and became a people without really, being a part of the actual law, not keeping it or whatever. Maybe they didn't enter covenant, but they had children in Israel. I don't know if that really was a thing. Can we look at any place where that happened? Potentially, but that's a tough one. But just to point that out, that's a thing. That if a foreigner staying with you, does that really mean that they're someone who's keeping Torah as well, if they buy into the whole thing? That they keep the law? Well, according to God's law, if they have children among you, you're to treat them like a native born among you. You're not to love them as yourself. Love the foreigner. God loved the foreigner. He loved Abraham. He was a foreigner. Again, looking at the book of the prophets, Sefer HaNevi'im, Yechezkel 47:22, that's Ezekiel 47 verse 22. You are to divide the land by lot as an inheritance, both to you and to the foreigners living among you, who give birth to children living among you. For you, they are to be no different from the native born among the people of Israel. So again, that just points out the whole point of saying, treat them like yourself, is what God seems to be saying. Treat the native born like yourself. And so even when it comes to dividing up territory for the land, God even said to Israel, you are like tenants with me. You're not, the land is not to be sold in perpetuity. In other words, you can't sell it permanently forever. You're allowed the right to redeem, all this other kind of rules in regard to inheriting, but the foreigners also can be a part of that. Bamidbar, that is the book of Numbers, chapter 9, verse 14. A foreigner among Israel may observe Pesach by following all its regulations, same law for the foreigner as for the citizen of the land. Bamidbar 15, verse 15. For this community, there will be the same laws for you as for the foreigner living with you. This is a permanent regulation through all your generations. The foreigner is to be treated like the same way before Adonai as yourselves. That's it right there. That's the thing. And that's the thing about it, is foreigners were being given a leg up in this country, in the United States of America, which is where I live. We're being given rights that native citizens were not getting. They were being given all these things, houses, lands, cars, money, and grants, and for things. The government was giving all the support, and you have to wonder what was the purpose in giving all these good things to these people who didn't earn it, who weren't native citizens, who were here legally much of the time. Why are they being given all this aid when you have native citizens who are adding to the community, to the economy, who are working jobs, who are doing things and paying taxes, but we're not being given any help? And it was like, something is wrong. You don't treat the foreigner better than you treat the native born, and vice versa. You don't want to mistreat, foreigners, so all kind of things like that. You look at Tehillim 51. Oh yeah. So looking at that, I would say that we have to treat people with fairness. We have to go ahead and be fair in the way we treat people. We can't be and when it comes to illegal immigration, I do see that we started, the whole thing with deporting illegal immigrants. People are trying to oppose that. As far as fairness, I've even read that apparently there's an initiative also that if an illegal immigrant were to come forward, instead of being found out and being deported because we find you and we get rid of you, try to get you out of the country, if you willingly volunteer to leave on your own will, and you come forward, say, hey, I'm here legally and I'm willing to comply to leave the country, you have a chance of being welcomed back legally, which I think that sounds very generous. Say, hey, you broke our immigration laws, and we'll still let you come back and become a citizen. Even as a legal immigrant, I had a friend of mine, former friend, whose wife, girlfriend, whatever, was staying in a room for rent where the owner of the home was this lady who was Asian, who came from a foreign country, and her whole family did, and her dad basically came here. They all came here legally, but what happened is when they came, they started a business and they were given a grant. I think if you're a legal immigrant, you come here through the whole immigration process, you can actually get money to start a business. Even native-born citizens don't get that. Like, specifically, if you are from a foreign land and you come here the legal way, you can get a grant to start your own business, which is pretty freaking cool. I think it's still something that, I'm not saying we should take that away from foreigners that come in as legal immigrants, but it would be nice if we had that same kind of thing for actual citizens that were born here too. That'd be nice. But regardless, just another reason to come here the legal way if you're an immigrant from a different country. If you want to come to America, and there are some perks there that you still have under the Trump administration to start your own business. But looking at something else, Tehillim 51, that's the book of Psalms, chapter 51, verse 2 and verse 6 specifically, when it's talking about Melech David, King David, when Nathan the prophet came to him after his affair with Bathsheba, Bathsheba, as many call her. That's what it says in Psalm 51 too. Now the numbering is different if you're reading the Hebrew Bible Be'ivrit. It numbers the verses differently a little bit, so they're kind of maybe a little out of order. But it mentions at the beginning of chapter 51 that this is concerning the issue with David and Bathsheba, right? And it says in verse 6, again, it's going to be read differently in the other version of the Bible. The verses are kind of a little bit in a different order, differently numbered. Against you, David says this when he's been saying this prayer unto God. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil from your perspective. Now, this has always bothered me. I would think that someone who, like David, and him specifically, coming from a son of Yishai, coming from the bloodline of Ruth, who was a Moabite, who was from the people of Moab, who was told, in the Torah, God said, do not let a Moabite down to the 10th or whatever generation join the people of Israel. I forgot what number of generations specifically, but there were people who were told, don't let them in. Yet Ruth was allowed in this teaching about how, she was a woman. The commandment was mostly about men. And I think the main thing that had it was that she was one who completely bought into the people. She had converted in her heart and her mind. She wanted to honor the God of Israel. She believed in him being God of the heavens and the earth and wanted to be a part of this people. Who's to say that she wasn't especially excited to marry into this family and be a part of this and be closer to this faith that she had come to believe in? And even when that didn't work out and her, husband, that didn't work out, she still stuck with her would-be mother-in-law and still cared for her and wanted to be a part of the people. So that's pretty cool. But looking at that, David should have known especially to treat foreigners as yourselves. But I guess in his eyes, it was more like they don't have a covenant with God. So I'm not sure about Bathsheba. I feel like she also, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't she also Jewish? Or was she also from a foreign people? Her husband was a foreigner, but he was a part of the land, right? He was a citizen. But why does he say against you only have I sinned? You committed adultery, led a woman into adultery. Even if you want to say she was unwilling, you're a king. What's she going to do? Say, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. What's she going to do then? Rape her or have her, taken out? I don't know. But it's just like, telling the king no, that can be dangerous. So she was put in a very unfair situation. You might say it would have been more righteous for her to deny him, but being in that situation yourself, it might not be as easy as you're saying. But on top of the fact she had her husband killed, yet why does he say against you and you only, God, have I sinned? You murdered a man to cover up your cheating. You cheated, she cheated. Whatever. I mean, the onus is mainly on him because you should have known better. But it kind of bothers me that it's looked at as, oh, well, whatever. I think there's something wrong with that. I don't like that. I think it should be treated differently. He definitely cheated and led her to that as well. So why is it treated like she's like, why does he say that? Is that true? Is that real? Can we really say that? There are other places in Tehillim where David calls for the death of his enemies. He's saying God put death on them and all these things. And yet you see with Melech Shlomo, when he prayed to God and God said, I'll give you anything you want. When he offered up all these rams he offered all these 1,000 sacrifices, what did he say? He asked for wisdom so he may know how to govern the people of Israel and not pervert justice. And God said, because you asked for this, didn't ask for the death of your enemies, didn't ask for money, didn't ask for women or any of this fame, you asked for wisdom so that you could do right and choose right from wrong. I'm going to bless you with all the other things that you didn't pray for. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, was David wrong in asking for the death of his enemies? In some cases, perhaps not. But at the same time, Melech Shlomo made something else his focus, and God blessed him for that. God still took care of his enemies up until the point where he stopped serving God. But it's just looking at that. It's just like David had, even before that, when he was exiled, thanks to Melech Shaul, who was hunting his life. He was among the Philistines, and what did he do? He would go on raid. He would take out men and also women and children, murdering them all because he didn't want anyone to leave. Didn't want to leave any witnesses. I mean, this is the guy who's supposed to be after God's own heart, and you're among foreign people. I mean, I don't know, all these women soldiers, are they going to hunt you down? I mean, I guess they could tell on you, but like babies? Imagine what if they had babies? Would he slaughter the babies too? I mean, this is the thing that bothers me about what he did. I just don't see him being innocent in that. But when talked about it, God says it was talked about, this is extra biblical context that I've been given, that he would be a man of blood. And that, I think it's also mentioned in the Tanakh that he's a man of blood. But when talked about it, God delivered him from all his enemies. He said the only thing that you messed up in was when the whole thing with Bathsheba. But you see these raids where he would kill men, women, and children. So that tells me that because they were foreigners and they didn't have a covenant with God, that they were treated like that. That it was okay for him to do that, I guess. And that bothers me. But then you take it in further and look at Matthew 15:26 and Mark 7:27, and see with the issue with the Canaanite woman, and she herself went to the Messiah like, hey, I need help. Can you heal my daughter who's demon possessed or whatever the issue was? And he said to her, you shouldn't take the food that belongs to the children to feed it to the pet dogs. He called this woman a Canaanite, a dog. Okay. Now my thinking is, why would he do that? I don't think he would have done that if she was someone who was keeping Torah and had faith in the Lord and was keeping his words. I don't believe he would have done that if she was like Ruth, who's also a foreigner, right? But she wanted to live for God. Maybe this Canaanite woman was not living for God at that time, but knew that this man of God had come by and he can give me what I'm needing. I have faith that he can still heal me. He can bless me, he can give me what I'm wanting, even though I've not been serving God. Maybe she serves a different God, different religion, but she still went and did this. And she refused to doubt. And because of this, he said, okay, because of your faith, here, I'm giving you what you asked for. Right? And so, you might even think that if Messiah himself called people who were foreign, who were not Jews, dogs, what's changed, right? We see that the sheet that came down for Kepha, Peter, tells us exactly what changed. It's not talking about food. All food is clean. No, it wasn't talking about food. It was saying, don't call them clean, those whom I've called clean. There are people from among the Goyim. He says in Yochanan 10 verse 16, he says, I have other sheep which are not from this pen. I need to bring them in, and they will hear my voice, and they will be one flock, one shepherd, guys, one people, one God. oneness. All of this is for that sake and purpose. So that's why for Yeshua came for the lost sheep of Israel. Even when he had done what he had done, died and resurrected, and was before them in his glorified state, hey, guys, I need you now to go into all the world, because I have sheep not from this pen. People who are not Jews by birth. Go and get all of them. I'm not leaving one behind. God's going to snatch us up from where we are, from the U.S., from Arabia, from Europe, from England, from wherever, Australia. Going to bring us all together, from India, from Mexico, from Brazil, wherever we are. He's going to bring us all from Africa, from anywhere in Africa, wherever. He's going to bring us all together. We're all going to be part of Israel. That's the thing about it. We've converted. Like Ruth, we put our faith in the true God, and we've converted in our hearts and confessed with our mouths. So that's what Yeshua taught. Even though at the time it hadn't yet been established, it hadn't yet happened, it hadn't manifested, yet this Canaanite woman believed that, this Canaanite woman believed that, hey, I believe that he'll still bless me. And God answered her faith. All right? Bypassed her sins, said, you know what? I'm giving you what you've asked for. I believe that if she was a woman after God's own heart, I don't think God did that just because she was foreign. I believe that if this woman had a heart for God, lived by the Jewish ways, kept his Torah, and lived by the commandments, did all she could to serve God, maybe her daughter wouldn't even be in that situation. But definitely, I believe that God would have not called her a dog. I believe that God, that she was, because that sees the heart. God no respect to a person. Look what he did for the all these foreigners of the land. He even sent Yonah Hanavi, the prophet Jonah, to the foreign people of Nineveh, just to save people there. So God's not going to worry about, oh, well, your people, you're a foreigner, so I'm not going to help y'all. God doesn't care about that. Those who serve him, even with Abraham, God didn't care about where he came from. He's trying to find someone throughout the generation. God roams to and fro throughout the whole earth, looking to show him so strong on behalf of those who trust him, who fear him, who love him, who are seeking him out, right? Who put their faith in him, right? God's looking for any people. Anyone. So Abraham was the one in his generation that he chose, because Abraham chose God. He chose him back. So that's what we got to do. And remember to treat foreigners with respect. Even the Messiah changed his tune when he saw this person had faith. And, I've had it to where, I've been around, and I'll admit there have been times where I feel like I've been in one in jeopardy. I hear this music, I hear a lot of Spanish music, and I'm like, oh man, I get tired of hearing this. I get tired of hearing people speaking in Spanish. I go to Walmart to get something, and every associate I turn to, they don't speak English. Either they do, or they just don't want to talk to me, because or they just really don't speak English. And I'm like frustrated, like, why are they? Can we not find any people here that speaks English? It's just like, and it's just a thing where I'm used to being, in this country where people, things being a certain way. But God had to correct me on that. Hey, don't be upset about these people because they talk differently, because their language is different. And I've had to learn, see them where they are. And I've had to learn, because I've been in situations where I feel like a foreigner. I haven't left the United States before, but I'm talking about being like, going and just being new somewhere, new job or new environment, new place of worship or new neighborhood, whatever. You feel like you're on the outside. And I had to realize these people are, they need someone to make them feel. When I went to UNT, the first dorm I stayed in, College Inn, my first year, I applied last minute, so they stuck me somewhere where they had room. And this place, College Inn, was like a motel. It was a dormitory. It was like very low end, and they had a lot of Asian people living there, because they put them all in the same building, so they would have people that they could relate to, which makes sense. And my first roommate was a guy, I'll put his full name out there, Noritsuga Yanagi, aka Nori, the tallest Japanese person that I've known. He wasn't super tall, but he may have been almost 6 feet, maybe even about 6 feet, possibly. But he had a British accent, which I'd never seen an Asian person with a British accent before. That was new to me. Cool guy, actually, pretty cool guy. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't, I got to be around, their culture and Asian culture a lot, and it was different. And it was like, okay, this is new, but I thought it was cool, and I've been around Spanish culture a lot and learned some cool things there too. I'm learning Spanish online and just talking to different Spanish people, different cultures. It's really cool. I've had people in my car riding with me who were Spanish, and I helped them out, and they they need to go somewhere and they don't necessarily know how to, they may have chosen the wrong destination. So like, I'm just help you out because, it's okay. I won't charge you. I'm just going to drive you there the rest of the way. And they're thankful. And we get to the topic of illegal immigration, and I get to feeling bad. These people just want to, and this is what I've seen around people that I just talked to someone a couple of days ago, a woman in her car with her 2 sons living out of her car. She has nothing. She was in the same situation that I'm in, and she has 2 kids with her. And it's like, that would suck if I had to have children with me and this thing, like taking care of me. It's doable, but like, man, I can't imagine, And she can't get the same aid that I can because she's an immigrant. So she was telling me that, she was trying to tell me, here, you can go to these places to get some help, but I can't. And I was like, she was trying to help me. And I'm like, I feel bad, So whether she came here legally or illegally, I don't know. But I do know that, a lot of people who are here illegally, if the only crime you commit in this country is coming here illegally, but you're trying to just have a better life, you're not trying to break laws, you're not trying to mistreat people, you're not trying to be a murderer or a pedophile or whatever, you're just trying to earn a living and take care of your family and be a good person, but you came here illegally, it's hard for me to really fight against that because, when we came and colonized this country, right? Native Americans could use the same logic, and in some cases they did, you might say, all the wars and bloodshed. It's hard to say, what should they just, should we really shame that? We act like we're so morally superior to people that we fight against, and a lot of times, Native Americans, they're savages, and a lot of people, it's how it's portrayed in a lot of media, and a lot of writings. If you look back at the things that we've done in the Filipino War, when we fought against, the people of the Philippines, a similar thing, they, in some cases, in some writings, I remember a certain author referred to them as 4 foot Indians, and this is a very, very derogatory term. And it's like, we think we're so much better than everyone that we fight against. I'm not saying that we should think ourselves that we should, serve foreign gods and all these things. I'm not trying to promote cultures that worship a different God than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What I am saying is that we are not so innocent. Our country is full of bloodshed. We've done horrible things to peoples. And I don't, I think that deporting illegal immigrants is something that is a necessary thing. I wouldn't call it necessary evil. It's just a thing to help protect us. It's not even to to protect, illegal immigrants, right? They, it's kind of unfair, the whole situation. And anyone who would have tried to fix it is going to bear the brunt of the blame. But really, the presidents beforehand who did nothing to try to fix it also bear blame, but only the ones who try to put their hands into the mess to sort it out, they're the ones who get kind of, you're bad because you're trying to do this thing, when really it's just, situation has to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. We can't just leave our borders wide open. People just come on in. Imagine what evil things, terrible things could happen. They're already happening here. But part of me believes, and this is another thing I want to talk about, the reason why that's happening to that degree is because we as a people, as Americans, have also veered away from God's Torah, away from doing right. And because of that, one of the things that God talks about in the Torah, if you don't keep my commands and live by my ways, these following curses will come upon you. One of them includes the foreigner among you will be lifted up higher, but you, the native, will be brought down lower. And that's beginning to happen in this country. Granted, our President Trump is trying to do something about that. And I appreciate that, hopefully you do too. And I'm not saying that it's a perfect solution. Maybe we can find a better one. And who knows if deportation is being weaponized in a way where people who even speak out against the government are being threatened to be deported as well. So someone mentioned that happening, and I don't know, dude. That would be bad. But it's just all kind of things like that. Legal immigrants who are being threatened to be deported because they spoke against the government in some way. That's not good, obviously. So, but First Amendment and all that, right? But looking at it in terms of this country, I think a lot of the things we're seeing, oppression from different countries, different peoples, is because we're not doing what God said. We're not living by His commandments. And that's why we're seeing a lot of suffering in this country. I'm not saying that we're perfect, but I think if we could come back to Torah, back to keeping not just confessing faith in Yeshua, but living by His Torah, I think we'd see a lot better things in this country, in any country. I feel like in this country we're seeing the foreigner lifted up higher, just like God said in His Word. It's the Word of God. It's the law that governs all creation. any nation, any people, in the book of Proverbs it says this, any people are brought down by sin, by iniquity. If we choose to disobey God, we're going to suffer. Evil is going to come. Now, should we blame the foreigner and look at these immigrants and say, oh, whether they're here legally or illegally, it's their fault, they're destroying our economy? Maybe what we need to do is really look at ourselves and say, are we keeping God's commandments? Are we living by God's word? And if you see someone who's, who sounds like they're not from here, they have an accent, I don't know, treat them with respect, treat them with love, treat them as you would want to be treated. That's what it comes down to, really, Vayikra 19:18. Leviticus 19:18, which is, love your neighbor as yourself. People think that commandment originated in Matthew. No, Matthew 22:37-40 is actually volume chapter 6, verse 4-5, plus Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, put together. And it comes down to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the sum of the whole Torah. God is our neighbor. He's everywhere we go. So he's first and foremost our neighbor, but also our fellow human being, right? If you see another person, whether they have an accent, speak only Spanish, speak only whatever, maybe they're from India, maybe they're from whatever country here in the U.S., they demand being treated with respect, with love. And, I'm not gonna, if someone's here illegally, am I gonna report them? It's a tough one. I feel like, am I obligated to? Would God say that I'm sinning if I know someone is here illegally and I don't report them? If I see them struggling and they're going through things? Golly, man, that's a tough one. It's hard to say. I would treat them as I want to be treated. If I had come to a country illegally, would I want someone to call me and get me deported? Probably not. So I'm thinking maybe I wouldn't. But there's no way to know just by looking at someone. You can't just tell. Maybe you have an idea. I don't know. They might be here legally. Maybe you would think that, but I don't know. And it's not my job to investigate that myself. You might think, well, you're obligated to it as an American. If I get a mandate from Trump personally saying, hey, I need you to start investigating everyone around you to see if they're here legally, maybe, I'll get into that. If they want to pay me to work for the government, hey, definitely. But I'm going to treat people that even if I assume they might be here as a foreigner, an immigrant, whether they're here legally or legally, I wouldn't know. I'm just going to treat them with respect and love. And I ask you to do the same, but to also understand that our current administration, our government are trying to do the best to look out for our economy, because it's been tanked. It's been, and with the tariffs and all this stuff, it's still having issues. That certainly seems like the case. There's a lot of things and issues with our economy. I won't get into that because I'm not an economist. I don't know everything about that. But as far as illegal immigrants are concerned, the immigration issue, there is right or wrong in it. And there are some gray areas that we can zoom in on. But love your neighbor as yourself is what I say. Let's, hopefully our economy gets better. And I welcome everyone being deported to come back the right way if at all you can. And if God makes that possible for you, by all means, come back and add to our economy. Come here legally. By all means, I'm not against people coming from a different country. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where it can be bad if we're not all keeping, doing what we can to help our own economy, and we have to do that to do that. And unfortunately, part of that does mean deporting illegal immigrants. In some cases, the immigrants can hardly be blamed because they're being taken advantage of by a government that was in place that intentionally wanted to bring in people who were not here legally to benefit only themselves. So illegal immigrants are being taken advantage of. In some cases, they're taking advantage of us by coming in and choosing to do bad things. You have people who might be members of the cartel, who are coming in and doing these things, might be members of criminal organizations or just criminals themselves personally with links to crimes in their own home country, or pedophilia, robbery, theft, murder, who knows, violent charges, domestic abuse, violence, who knows, things like that. These are things that are worth looking into and just vetting. We're not saying people can't come here, but we have to have standards and rules to keep our country from being destroyed in the process. We shouldn't just open a wide the gate, let everyone come in without vetting and trying to do something to make sure that we're not being, that our economy and that our country isn't being overrun and destroyed in the process. So that's all I'm gonna say about it. This may be the only video I make about legal immigration unless something happens that I gotta speak on. Again, the issue with immigrants that are here, that have children here, what do you do about the children? It's a sticky situation. It may be best to send them with their parents. That might be better than putting them in foster care. I don't know how that would go. I don't know, man. Maybe they should be here according to the laws of Vayikra 1934. If they have children here. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but I have to, maybe give me your thoughts. What do you think? If a foreigner has children here, whether they're legal or illegal immigrants, if a man and woman, say a man who's legal and a woman who's illegal, or vice versa, have a child here, that child should be allowed to stay, right? That's a thing. But maybe even the woman can stay if they end up getting married. There's also that, right? People who marry into citizenship here, that was a thing, right? So I don't know, there's all kind of ways of looking at it. If two people who are both illegal immigrants have a child here and then are forced to leave, what should be done to that child? What do you have to say about it? According to Leviticus 1934, right? How do you feel about that? Anyway, I've gone on for longer than I wanted to. I wanted to make this a half-hour video. It ended up being an hour long, which I actually do not love. I'm actually very upset about this because I didn't want this to be this long. I wanted it to be short so that you could get a bite-sized amount of information and process it. It's still not as long as it could have been. It's not a full hour, but I still wanted it to be shorter. I'm working on getting the video shorter because I want it to be easier for you to digest it. And it's a lot easier to digest something when it's in smaller doses. So regardless, Shalom Rav, I hope what you heard blessed you. Have a blessed week. Shabbat is coming soon. So I hope we get this video out before Shabbat starts. So shalom to you guys. If you see someone that you think is a foreigner in your country, don't investigate whether they're here legally or illegally. Unless, I guess if God puts that on your heart, I guess you could. But just be a blessing. Love others as yourself. Remember that our ancestors started out as foreigners among a foreign people, before they were given the land. So, I think the people of Israel are missing that. I'm not saying that Israel has a problem with immigration, with people there who are foreigners, but a lot of people entering the land are out to destroy Israel. You see what happened with the Palestinians that are there right now, with the plotting to destroy and working with Hamas and terrorist organizations and all kind of evils happening. And it's just like, I would understand more so Israel having problems with, distrusting immigrants. I can understand that much more than I would, probably even more so than even this country here in the U.S., which we still should watch our back with that. But Israel is suffering with it too. It's just not an easy thing to deal with. People that come in and you think they're all good and normal, then they just start killing your people, bombing and stabbing and shooting, gunning down your people. It's like, it can make it really difficult to trust outsiders. And even the Word of God does say that God will rid Israel of foreigners. My thing is, if we're in Moshiach Yeshua, are we counted as foreigners too? It's another question that I think I need to get into. Where does the believer stand if you believe in Yeshua the Messiah? Where do you stand in relation to Israel? Are you counted as one with them? Do you get to live in the land? Should you expect to be given a place in the land of Israel, territorially, like physically speaking, like catching a plane to Israel? Should you be able to live there? Something to think about. So until then, shalom to you guys. It's just further things to complicate the issue. There's something else to talk about. And also, next video I want to talk about the whole thing about civil disobedience, civil rights, and how to go about being revolutionary without being a revolutionary, if you know what I mean. How to change the society you live in and affect change without being violent or opposing the government, which I believe might even be opposing God, might be. In some cases, as the original seal, apparently, of the United States was going to be when they formed it during the colonial days. Originally, it was going to be the children of Israel leaving Egypt with a caption that says, disobedience to tyrants is obedience to God. So it's like opposing the government is supposed to be a bad thing, really, or maybe it's not. It depends, right? It talks about fighting to save the lives of innocent people in Proverbs. Would you let them be dragged off unto death? Won't he who guards your life know? And he'll certainly, hold you accountable, right? So, and then it talks about where Rav Mo talks about, if you were a slave and you were called to be a believer, don't let it get to you. But if you can get your freedom, do so, right? So if you're being enslaved and being deeply mistreated and seeing your people being put to death and wrongfully murdered by the current leadership, yes, you have a right, an obligation to oppose that. But how do you do that? How do we do that? That's a good question. When's the right time to get violent? When's the right time to take up arms? Right? If it were a WROL situation without rule of law, is that a time when we're allowed to fight back? These are good questions to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments if you want. But until then, like and subscribe for more videos. I feel like I have to say that. I haven't said that in any of my videos until now, I think. But it helps. But expect more content and a lot more teaching coming up. I'm thinking about making these things Unwalled Synagogue too, because this is not really, I'm talking about something, this is more like just me talking to you. I like to just make it just like a place. I'm not even an Unwalled Synagogue, just like a place. I just making videos in general. But I may put them in, if they fit into this playlist of Unwalled Synagogue, I may put them there as well, just because I want to, organize my channel. I may even make it a separate channel, depending, and have one channel for my music and another one for talking about topics like this. So regardless, let me know what you think about that, if you even are a fan of the channel at all. Until then, shalom to you guys, and I hope that what you hear blesses you. Bishop Yeshua, Shabbat Shalom as well. See you next time.